The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Arcane Wonders, game toppers, non-stop streaming of 24-hour cable TV news, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy of the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes take a trip back to ancient Italy to review Rome and Roll. Then the Dukes take a look back at the review of Undaunted Normandy in their Dukes Double Take. And now, The Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And a pretty tired Alex.
Word, my brother. So this is episode 237 of the Dukes of Dice. Rome wasn't built in a D-Day. Rome wasn't built in a D-Day. That title suggestion thanks to D. Shannon over on our Board Game Geek Guild. Of course, that famous saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes some time, Alex. You gotta let things kind of play out over time.
Be patient sometimes.
Sometimes.
Just to put a timestamp on this, we are recording this at about 7:23 p.m. Central Time on Thursday, November 5th, for whatever purpose that holds. Just know that we're in that state of mind at time of recording.
2020.
Yes, 2020, that specific year. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yes, D. Shannon, excellent title suggestion. Really dig it. We have some runners up, though, that we'll mention at the end of the episode. We get all of our help naming our episodes. I feel like my rhythm is off. From our amazing Board Game Geek Guild number 2008. Go head over to Board Game Geek and you can find us there and talk about the next episode when Alex posts that. But hey, Alex, let's talk about this episode. How you doing?
I mean, generally fine. I've been staying up pretty late for no reason anyone could possibly think of. I've been feel like I'm back in the news just in terms of the obsessiveness I've had over watching the things unfold. I'm sure there have been other folks like it. It's been distracting. I'll say that. Regardless of who you support, I'd have to imagine this is distracting to just about anyone in this country. It's just the cherry on top of a very long year. Just how this whole thing has unfolded and is going, and the mess of everything. Anyway, so other than that, fine. I took a road trip with Sweet Sassy Abby out to Nashville. We enjoyed that town quite a bit. Had some delicious Hattie B's, hot chicken. Sean, it's the best fried chicken you'll have in your entire life.
Yum.
Yep, very good. Had an oyster scramble for breakfast the next day. And generally speaking, got a good reminder of why I like that town so much.
Cool.
Just as an update on the race for where we're going to live, I would say the most likely place, if I had to guess, not having really been there that much, is Raleigh-Durham, just because of family factors and from what I know about the city. But I would say tied for second would be St. Louis and Nashville. Nashville is kind of like a slightly better version of St. Louis in a lot of areas. Slightly better weather, slightly more things to do. You know, it has a lot of edges to St. Louis, but I don't know if those edges are enough to have us look to uproot and move and try and build a new network and all those fun things that come with a different city. So that's what I've been up to. Sean, how have you been? I don't know if you want to go emotional update or Dukes of Diet update first.
Dukes of Diet is bad, Alex.
Oh, no.
It is bad. So I spent this last weekend working on insulating the shed where Mariah and Chewy are doing Chewy's homeschooling, because we had like terribly cold weather. We actually gave Chewy a week off of school when we had this terrible snowstorm come in. We had a snow day, Alex. Like the courts were closed.
Wow.
It was, yeah. So then after that, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I better insulate the shed. I spent all day Saturday and Sunday insulating the shed, and I got 40% done because the shed has all of these like built-in shelves. And so I can't just put up one piece of insulation nice and easy. I have to do all these like cutouts. It was bad. And then I was like, you know what? I'm out here all day Saturday, all day Sunday. We ordered pizza. I had beer. I haven't been drinking beer. So that was not good. And then there was some stress eating on Tuesday. Again, not sure why. So I'm up a couple pounds. It's okay. It's fine. Not a big deal. Nothing crazy. Nothing I won't be able to come back from. But yeah. So I will be spending the rest of this weekend, or this coming weekend rather, after I've edited the podcast, back out in the shed, hopefully finishing the rest of the installation. It has not been fun. It has not been fun.
I wouldn't enjoy that. I'm not very handy.
Well, yeah. I've got a good system down. It's going good. You know what the worst thing about like home projects is? When you have to stop what you're doing to go get something at the hardware store. You're like, oh, I ran out of liquid nails, or I ran out of this, or ran out of that. And you have to like, because you're up, you're moving, you're working around, and then you sit in your car for like 20 minutes and then you get all stiff. Maybe you haven't experienced this yet because you're not old enough yet.
Not quite.
Okay. Yeah, getting stiff is not good. Not good. So anyway, that's kind of my Dukes of Die update. I think I'll be back on track. As of today, I was back on track. So we'll see.
Well, I wish you the best of luck in eating better and living a happier and healthier life. Ugh.
So what I will say though is I mentioned on the last episode to keep an eye or an ear out for my appearance on the Cult Classic Callback podcast with Aaron and Lindsay. I talk about Dune, 1984 David Lynch Dune movie that dropped a couple days ago. So go check that out. cultclassiccallback.com, I believe. cultclassiccallback.com. Yep. That's where you want to go check it out. It was a pretty fun time. I think I was entertaining, and I was charming and insightful.
I just heard the first few minutes, and I have to say, I do watch movies, Sean. I have seen a number of movies, in fact.
Oh, please.
I haven't seen that one that you were talking about, but I've seen a lot of movies.
Don't watch the 84 Lynch Dune, because you liked Dune. It could probably only sour it.
I still need to read the next one, and I only read the first one, and I've read, they continue to be great, obviously, but I never got around to it. I don't know. The second one to me is I enjoyed a great amount. It's Dune Messiah. It's a bit of a hurdle. It reads more like a philosophical treatise than a novel. Yeah,
kind of.
Okay,
but anyway, hey, board games, and I have played
a few of them to talk about. And Sean, you have a new play on here, which is crazy. But we're not going to start with you. We're going to start with me because I'm selfish.
Yeah, I'll be the meat. I'll be the board game meat. You be the board game bread.
I love it. Well, the first slice of bread in this board game sandwich we're creating on the fly.
Wait, hold on, Alex. If you were a type of bread, this is your ice cream question.
Sure.
If you were a type of bread, what type of bread would you be?
Well, the first one that came to my head was rye.
Oh.
But I don't have a good explanation as to why I would be rye, and it's probably not accurate. I'm pretty Jewish. Maybe I'm more of challah bread because I'm also pretty white. Yeah, challah bread. It's kind of light. There's still a little bit of substance there, but it's mostly kind of light and optimistic and a little bit floaty. But a tasty Jewish bread. Challah bread. That's what I would be. What about you, Sean?
Oh, I'm straight up tortilla, baby.
Okay. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Why?
Could you put some cheese on me and that'd be delicious. That sounds really gross.
I mean, I know from experience, having put cheese on you and tasted you, that you are in fact delicious.
Well, there you go.
Boy, I hope this doesn't make the final cut of the podcast. Anyway.
Don't worry, it won't, except it will. Anyway.
Oh, no. Hey, I'll talk about Mandala Stones. This is an upcoming title from Board and Dice, who used to work with, for full disclosure, back in my Grey Fox days. We partnered with them on a few releases. This is designed by Philip Glowatch, and I know I'm pronouncing the first name correctly. I strongly doubt I'm pronouncing the second one. Mandala Stones is a It's a game where you are, well, let me just put it this way, Sean. I have a feeling that if things go as normal, if this releases in 2021, it releases in Germany, and the Spiel audience gets a chance to see this, I think this would be a strong contender for the Spiel, or it very much feels like a Spiel type of game in terms of really elegant mechanics, but with really interesting decisions that you're making. It plays similar to, did you ever play Senshi from Arcane Wonders? Our fine sponsor, Sean?
I have played Senshi. Yes, I have played Senshi. I own Senshi, in fact.
Yeah. Senshi is, for folks who don't know, it's a game that's also very, very elegant. You're either taking a stack of discs from the center of the table and adding them to your board. You're stealing one from an opponent, or you're scoring one. And when you score one, the color of all the ones on the top level, you get to kind of add to your stack, and any opponents who have matching colors get to add them to their stack. Fairly simple. Mandala Stones has those same kind of stacks of tiles, and what you're going to do is you are going to move a marker and then pick up all of the discs in that stack that, you go clockwise and you pick up all the ones that aren't blocked. Basically, if there's another marker, there's 4 markers on this grid, and if there's another marker adjacent to the one you're trying to claim, you can't pick it up. But the rest of them you pick up and add to a stack on your board. So you're either doing that or you're choosing to score. So you're either moving or scoring. It's a very simple thing. If you score, you are going to score all of one color, and you're going to score them left to right. And so, yeah, it's pretty fascinating because when you score in different stacks in different ways. So, for instance, one of the stacks will score 4, 2, 1, 1. Basically, the 4th tallest on the stack only gets you 1 point, but the one on the very bottom of the stack gets you 4 points. So you want to have smaller stacks there so you can kind of clear and rescore and clear and rescore. But another section might have, say, is looking for diverse colors. Another one is looking for diverse sizes of stacks elsewhere on your scoring mat. You'll score all of those, and for whichever region you've scored, you're going to add those stones to a track, and that can give you bonus points in addition to the ones you scored from whatever sets you scored. You want to plan ahead because as you pull the top stone off of a stack, it reveals the next layer, and you want those to be as color aligned as possible because once you have a stack on your board, you can't add on top of it. You can only bleed that stack out and then add once that space is open. I'm probably not explaining it as well as I could be, but just know that this game is really elegant, has some nice thinky decisions, and feels like an evolution. If you've played Senshi, which I don't know how popular that game is, hard to say, but if you played a game like Senshi, this is a nice implementation of it, and I have a feeling it's going to look really cool on the table. So that's Mandala Stones. I would keep an eye out for it. Thanks to BJ from Board Game Gumbo for showing me that one. Sean, over to you for the meat of this board game sandwich.
Yum. Okay, if you were a meat, Alex, what kind of meat would you be?
Turkey.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was
turkey.
quick.
Yeah.
There was no deliberation. You knew it.
Yeah. What about you?
I think I'd be a beef brisket, Alex.
That's a good option.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd be a beef brisket.
I mean, and no offense here, but
I'm a beefy boy.
You're a beefy boy. Like the fatty, like it has a nice fat content on it.
Exactly.
That gives it some flavor, right? But you can have a nice lean brisket too, and you're working towards that.
Sure.
But
yeah.
But at the moment, I would say you're not quite lean brisket at the moment.
Well, you want all the fattiness, or a lot of the fattiness, to kind of render down into the juice. So anyway, let's talk about my board game meat, which is Kongdomino Duel. Alex, have you played Kongdomino Duel?
I've played Kongdomino, of course, but I have not played Kongdomino Duel. No, I have not.
So this is a roll and write game. Hey, we'll be talking about a roll and write game later.
Ooh.
And of course, this is based on the award-winning Kongdomino from Blue Orange Games. I'm trying to see here. Yeah, it's designed by Bruno Catala, Ludovic Maublanc. So yeah, it's interesting. So like I said, it's a roll and write game. It's 2 players only because it's a duel. You roll 5 dice, I believe, and you're going to take turns drafting the dice. And basically, you're going to take those 2 dice, and they kind of form a domino for you. You have your own map that is your kingdom, and you're trying to put crests or coat of arms, like coat of arms together to form larger domains. And basically, the more contiguous matching crests you have in a particular domain times these point multipliers that you're able to get from the dice will determine how many points that you score throughout the game. So it's like King Domino, like dominoes, where the domino that you're placing, you need to have it be orthogonally adjacent to a matching crest. Of course, you have in the center your castle, and you could always kind of branch out from there. Now, what's interesting about drafting the dice is not only are you looking for certain crests, but some of the faces of the die have X's on them, and those are the point multipliers that I was talking about. So obviously you want to get a bunch of point multipliers so you can score a lot of points for your domains. But additionally, there is this shared spell book in between you and your opponent. And whenever you draft dice without X's, you're going to mark off one of the lines on a particular track of spellbook. And so it's a kind of a race to get to the center of these different points of the spell book. If you get to the center, like for example, there's a crest with just a simple diagonal line, then a crest with 2 diagonal lines. If I get to the center of the diagonal line track first, I'm going to get some sort of wizard ability that I can use once per game. So like, for example, I can once per game, if I could play my domino without following the connection rules, or I can separate my dice. I can basically break the domino in half and place it in different spots on the board. So lots of cool little things you can do there. It was a fast, simple game. I found it pretty interesting. I liked it quite a bit. It was a roll and write that was enjoyable. There was some thinkiness. Nothing crazy, nothing overly complex like certain other roll and writes we might talk about later. But I think it's well worth a look. I think it is a decent follow-up to King Domino and Queen Domino. Definitely lighter than either of those, but not by a whole lot. You'd dig it. I think you'd like it.
Yeah, I was thinking back on King Domino and Queen Domino, and I have certainly played King Domino with Abby. I have Queen Domino on the shelf. I haven't broken it out in a while. I don't know if I'd be in the market so much for Duel because I pretty much already play it mostly as a 2-player. I mean, maybe
Sure.
is it a better implementation at 2 than King Domino or Queen Domino?
Yeah, probably. I think I liked King and Queen Domino at higher player counts. The drafting seemed to be less interesting at 2 players, I thought. Whereas here, the drafting's kind of built for 2 players.
Gotcha. Okay.
In Duel.
Interesting.
So, yeah, so that is King Domino Duel from Blue Orange Games.
Well, the last one I'm going to talk about is Ragers, Champions of the Arena, which is a really dramatic name for a game. It's designed by Rafał Rogusz, and probably mispronouncing that, as we always mention. Published by Galacta. This one was one that was sent to me by BJ from Board Game Gumbo, and after playing it, I understand why he didn't need to have easy access to that game. This is a 2-player game that is a pseudo rock paper scissors. Basically, you are gladiators in an arena. There are you're going to play 5 cards against each other in a round. But the only one that really matters effectively is the last one. Whatever the 5th card played, either, and there's a chance that someone will play more cards than the other person, but whatever your last face-up card played is what the symbol you're going after. And so it's rock, paper, scissors. So spear beats shield, shield beats axe, axe beats spear, or something along those lines. It might be reversed of that, but that's basically the idea. And so if your last one was a spear and the last one for the opponent was an axe, congrats, you score all axe cards you have in your row. If you both have played axes, well, you score all of these other cards that give you points. Half the cards have these kind of rock, paper, scissors abilities on them. The other half have special abilities on them. So anytime you place I think it's literally called the cheater card or something along those lines, your opponent has to flip the card that they just played face down, unless it's countered or protected or whatever else. And then there's other ones that allow that force your opponent to play multiple cards out of hand, basically shortening the round. There's different things that can happen here, but that's effectively the game. There are bonus points you can win by pleasing the crowd. There are certain restrictions that certain rounds have. It's a 2-player head-to-head kind of rock, paper, scissors-y kind of game. It has these symbols for some of these special ability cards, but not really well spelled out what they do from the symbols. The iconography doesn't do a good job of that. You have to kind of constantly be referencing the rulebook. Okay, how does this card work? Okay, how does that card work? It just wasn't fun. I don't know. Don't have anything further to describe other than that. It just wasn't fun. So that's Ragers Champions of the Arena. I don't recommend it, but I played it. So that's your board game sandwich for this episode. And based on Sean's recent plays, this might be an ongoing sandwich. We might have sandwich time ongoingly. It's possible. All right. Well, that's going to do it for what we played. After a word from our sponsors, it's time to dive headfirst into our review of Rome and Roll. Sean Ramirez. Sean, help! The city's being overrun by baddies and all sorts of crazy villains.
It is I, Super Sean, here to assist. What is that, young citizen?
I need a board game to save the day. There's villains attacking the city.
Well, you've found one in Freedom 5. I was the 6th member that couldn't quite make the team, but the 5 of them will help you out for sure. And this board game, it's aces.
What are your powers, Super Sean? Are they powers of super selling out?
No, it's more like powers of just being overly critical of things, both games and people, latching on to their foibles and making sure that everyone knows about them. Those are my superpowers. So basically, I just kind of pester the villains and make them feel bad about themselves until they stop doing villainous things.
Sounds like Super Sean needs therapy.
No, I'm fine. I'm great. I'm having an incredible year.
So if you couldn't tell already, this is an ad for Freedom 5, a Sentinel Comics board game currently live on Kickstarter, live through November 13th, featuring Kickstarter exclusive content, pre-painted minis. This is a Dice Tower Essentials cooperative game designed by Richard Lanius and the Sadler brothers. It has, as of the time of the recording of this ad, well funded, more than quadrupled its fundraising goal and still climbing. If you want to get in on the action, you can find this live on Kickstarter now. Give it a check. If you like minis, pre-painted minis, and you like awesome cooperative gameplay, you're going to love Freedom 5, a cooperative comic book adventure game.
And the easiest way to find this Kickstarter is simply to go to freedom5game.com. It will redirect you right to the Kickstarter page where you could find out much more about it.
But make sure you do it before November 13th, or you're going to be too late to save the day, like Super Sean.
Alex, that wasn't very good. This was just bad.
That's fine. We're going to keep it.
I'm pointing out your
Oh, you're using your superpower. Wow, I'm
using my superpower.
I'm pretty thick. That's why I'm not a superhero. Anyway, go to arcanewonders.com to learn more about Arcane Wonders' fantastic titles, and go to freedom5game.com if you want to check out the Freedom 5 Kickstarter. It's never a blunder when you game with Arcane Wonders. Well, Sean, in these tricky times, our friends at Game Toppers want to let folks know that they're still open for business. They're still doing what they can to provide some at-home gaming goodness to help people upgrade their gaming experience while they're trapped at home. So Late Pledge Manager is open on Game Toppers. They have a lot of great bundles on their website, some of which might sell out, so check it out before it gets too late. Also, mats are going to be able to be shipped out relatively soon, so if that's something you've been looking for, hey, great. Thanks to Game Toppers for supporting the podcast and for supporting gamers looking to upgrade their gaming experience.
So go visit them at GameToppersLLC.com.
They say Rome wasn't built in a day, but it turns out it can be built in approximately 45 to 60 minutes. Rome and Roll is a roll and write, a big roll and write with big ambitions. But do those ambitions for a complex, heavy strategy roll and write come through well? Or is this game better left to the ancients? We'll tell you.
I thought you were going to say, or does it get stabbed in the back?
Well, that would have been a better intro, but I'm not very good at this, as we found out from the multiple takes I just took, Sean.
Oh, boy. Yeah, let's talk about Rome and Roll. published by PSC Games, designed by David Turksey and Nick Shaw. So, yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Well, so I just want to jump in here and say, before we get to the meat of you're about to explain this game, and this is unconventional. I apologize for disrupting the flow of the review. I will say, I told you at the beginning of the show, I'm very excited to talk about this game.
Okay.
I didn't tell you why I'm excited, and I can't tell you how curious I am about where you're going to end up on this. I'm going to let you continue, but I'm just going to throw that out there as a preliminary thing. Go on, sir.
Okay, thanks, Kanye. So I'm going to let you finish.
No, I understand the reference.
Yeah, well, okay. And of course, as always, I'm Taylor Swift. So Roam and Roll. It is a roll and write. We're not going to be using a pad of paper like in many roll and writes. It uses a dry erase boards and dry erase markers. So in the center of the table, you're going to place the board for Roam, and it's basically a grid that is made up of, there's like a little river, the Tiber River. Is that right? The Tiber? Yeah. There's the Servian Wall, and then there's different color shading to represent this different 7 hills of Rome. And then in the center, there is the Forum Romanum, I believe. At the bottom of the board, there are 4 of the Roman provinces. So there's France, Spain, Turkey, and Egypt. And there are these little outposts and these roads, these uncompleted roads that connect from Rome to these settlements, actually, I think is what they're called. So that's what you have in the center of the board. You're going to be drawing on that board. You're going to be building buildings within Rome. You're going to be conquering settlements in the different provinces and then building roads to connect Rome to the different settlements that have been conquered. Now you have your own player board as well, and these are completely asymmetric. They're all different. They're different characters. Let me see here. Who do we got? We've got the Legatus. We've got that's Rome. We've got the Patrician. We've got the Mercatrix and the Perfectus, and they all have different abilities. They start with some different resources. And what's interesting about these player boards is essentially at the bottom, you have these 4 tracks that are going to be one of the main sources of points. You've got coins, you've got building points, you have the road points. I forget what those are called.
Legacy, I think.
Legacy. Yeah, that's right. Legacy. And then you have the flags or glory, which is what you get for conquering settlements. Now, in addition to that, you also have places to track your legions and to track your senators. And those are some special resources that you can deploy throughout the game. Additionally, you have your storehouse on the left, which is where you're going to keep the different resources. You have wood, brick, fish, stone, jewelry. And then kind of in the middle of the board, you have your three sets of advisors. And they're all named different things based off, the different player board. And these let you check off boxes to get some game-breaking abilities, rule-breaking abilities that you can use throughout the game. And then on the far right side of your board, you simply have your score sheet, totaling up points at the end of the game from everything that you've done. And there's a very nice, on the left-hand side, a very nice action reference that goes through the actions, I think, pretty well. So that's what you're doing with your own board. Now let's talk about the turn structure. So we're gonna pass around a first player marker, and we're gonna roll some dice. It's equal to 2 times the number of players plus 1. There are 3 types of dice: blue, yellow, and red. They have different distributions for what's going to be on their faces, and depending on the player count, it tells you at this many blue, this many yellow, this many red, etc. So we're going to draft these dice in turn order, and then we're going to each have 2 dice, and in turn order, we're going to execute 1 die at a time. And these die have on them depictions of the resources. They also have certain types of actions. Some of them may not have actions, and you're going to execute a die fully, and then the next player will execute a die, and then you'll come back around and execute your second die. And here are the actions. You can construct a building in Rome. There are these blueprint cards. You start the game with 8 blueprints out, and you are able to construct one of them if you use the symbol and if you have the right number of resources available for whatever that blueprint requires, some amount of wood and brick, etc. And you can either have those in your storehouse, or maybe you are the dice that you rolled are providing some of those to you. That's great. So you will go ahead and first move a meeple of your color that is placed on the Forum Romanum. You can move it to an adjacent building, and that kind of determines where you can build off of. You have to build adjacent to wherever your meeple is. What's the Overseer? I think it's
the Overseer.
Yeah. Okay. So then I'm going to build my building. I pay my resources. The blueprint's going to tell you what type of polyomino shape it is. So like little Tetris shapes. You're going to draw it. There's might be some restrictions. It might say this has to be wholly on a hill or wholly on a marsh. A marsh is simply a non-hill space. There's other general build restrictions, like you can't build a building straddling two hills, for example. You can't build a building straddling the Servian wall. But again, there may be building specific restrictions. Some of the buildings are going to have some sort of immediate bonus you get. Maybe it's a type of resource when you build it. Additionally, if you build adjacent to at least one opponent's building, you're going to get to add a senator to your supply. And then for every building that you are building next to, if that building type has a production, you will trigger production for that player, which is pretty interesting. So that's the construction action. There's the conquer action. I mentioned before that you have the different provinces. This is where you're going to generate a certain number of military strength. It's based on the available legions that you have, plus these little spear symbols that you have on some of the dice, and you have to meet or exceed the strength of a particular settlement. If you do that, great. You're going to cross off that settlement in your color on the main board. You're going to score a number of points equal to the flags that are displayed there on your glory track. And then you have to garrison a troop. So you're going to underline you're going to cross out one of the troops that you had, and that troop is considered garrisoned. Although you can still get points for garrison troops at the end of the game. So that is the conquer action. There's the expand action, which lets you build roads from Rome to conquered settlements, whether you conquer them or whether someone else conquered them. Again, you're going to score a certain number of points for building the road on your legacy track. And if that settlement, that conquered settlement, is attached to Rome for the first time or connected to Rome for the first time, the player that owns that settlement, not the road building player, is going to get the resource associated with that region for that player who has the settlement. So like, for example, fish is connected with Spain, wood is connected with France, etc. All right. You also have the Raise Legions action, which is where you can activate the Legion symbol on any army buildings that anybody has built, not just buildings that you've built. So most of these are going to, in some capacity, give you more soldiers to use. And again, I can use some that I've built, some that you've built, but if I use some that you've built, Alex, I'm going to give you a coin. Is that right? I give you a coin?
That is correct.
Yes, I give you a coin.
I mean, not give, but I earn a coin. I don't think,
yeah.
Right.
It's
not a resource you have, really. It's
correct
points.
It's a point. Yeah, you get to add a coin to your track because I used your building. I get the troop, but yeah, you get the coin. All right. Then you've got the tax action. This lets you generate resources in one region for every settlement that you have connected. So that kind of rewards you for going pretty super heavy into one particular region. Finally, there's the trade action, which lets you spend 3 matching resources to gain 3 coins. And you can potentially get some bonuses if you are using jewelry for that. In fact, you can get +1 point or +1 coin per jewelry that you use if you kind of use a matching symbol from or a particular symbol from the dice. So you're going to continue to do this until all of the Nero cards have been removed. So at the start of the game, you're going to have a certain number of Nero cards, which are worth points in descending order, and players will collect these Nero cards once they've hit certain thresholds on the 4 tracks. So like for example, the patrician has at the 17 on the coins that triggers it, but for the legatus it triggers it on the 14 instead. There's some balance here. Once those Nero cards are gone, you're going to complete one more full round, tally up the points, and whoever wins is the best Roman roller. Yeah, baby. All right, Alex. Tell me about, what did you know about this game? What were your expectations about Roman roll?
Well, I didn't know a lot. I am excited anytime there's a game that's trying to expand what a genre can be. And in other words, we've seen some more heavier and heavier roll and writes as that mechanic, as that style of game has grown to be more accepted. We've seen, obviously, the flip and fill use to great effect in Welcome 2. So I like when you can take something that is usually associated with lighter games and make it into something heftier. We haven't reviewed it. I think I'm not even sure if I've discussed it on the show. But Sonora, which is a kind of flick and write, I like what that one did. And this takes that and really adds a high level of strategy to it. And I knew that going in. That name, that designer name, was really familiar to me, and I had to look it up. David Turkshi had done Tricarion, has done a number of other games, a lot of which have gotten pretty heavy praise. So I came into this actually with pretty decent expectations. It's a roll and write, which I tend to enjoy, and it's got a little bit of meat on it, which gives it kind of a little bit of innovation to it in a sense. It's taking something that isn't traditionally considered heftier, and it's making it heftier. So I thought that was cool. So those were my expectations going in. What about you, Sean?
Yeah, I'm actually looking up. We talked about this back in episode, come on, episode 211, as part of our Kickstarter. Hey, remember when we did consistent news and Kickstarter talk? So yeah, this was a year ago or so, and we talked about it when it was on Kickstarter. And I remember looking at this and thinking, wow, this looks really interesting. It looks really good. I believe you probably asked me, are you going to back it, Sean? I'm like, yeah, maybe. I didn't. But it certainly piqued my interest quite a bit. So much so that when we were kind of trying to figure out what we're going to do next, I saw this and I was like, oh, this could be fun. I know you like roll and writes. I like roll and writes, and I like some meteor games. And I too was kind of curious to see how this was going to get pulled off, this kind of heavier roll and write. So I had pretty high expectations for this going into it.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, let's dig into it, Sean. Rules.
Yeah.
How did you learn this game?
I taught myself how to play. I picked up the rule book and I read through it. I think it was pretty decent. I'm looking at it now. It gives good examples. It breaks down sections somewhat, but not super thoroughly. I think it's a very solid rule book. I don't think it's a great rule book.
I did not enjoy this rule book.
Okay.
I found myself reading and staring and rereading and looking back and trying to the overall arc and flow of the game. It took some time for that to unveil itself. And sometimes you can really get a sense of what am I trying to do in this game from the rules, and it kind of, the game pieces together really well in your mind. You can understand a lot, especially having played as many games as we have, just from reading through a rule book and getting a sense of the game. Mm-hmm. I had a really hard time getting a sense of this game. I mean, I spent a good long time on this rulebook teaching myself, and much longer. It took a lot longer for this thing to click than a game typically would. And I have to think that's the rulebook, but as we'll discuss later, I think there's reason to think it could be the game too. So I didn't enjoy the rulebook, but I mean, if you look through it, it's got good graphics. It seems decently laid out. But I found myself oftentimes confused and not really sure where to look or exactly how things operated. To me, it fell short as a rulebook, just in terms of me grokking the game from the get-go. That was my take on the rulebook.
What I will say is when I taught Raquel, I probably did her a disservice. It became pretty clear to me before my first play, like, oh, Like the main point is filling in these tracks: the coin, the glory, the legacy, and what's the other one? The building tracks. That's where you're going to score a lot of points. I think I also failed to mention in the rules overview that the buildings are worth certain points if you've met certain conditions as far as placement, etc. But yeah, when I taught Raquel to play, by the end of the game, she was like, "Wait a minute, you're saying that these tracks are just point for point?" I'm like, "Yeah, didn't I explain that?" And I kind of went through the rule book when I taught her. I didn't read it, but kind of used that as, because I didn't have it well enough down. I had to kind of refer to the rule book. And so when the game leaves endgame scoring till the end, by the time she was listening to endgame scoring, she was done. She was ready to play. And so I think if that were in the front, like, hey, you're going to score a ton of points by filling out in these tracks. Spend a lot of effort filling in these tracks. Here's some other ways you can score. I feel like a lot of times when I do teach, I tend to say, here's the objective, here's how you score up front to kind of build that framework. And I find it odd that a lot of rule books don't do that. They have endgame, trigger, and scoring all the way at the end.
Yeah.
So I can kind of see what you're saying. All right, let's talk about then art and components. So like I kind of mentioned, you get these 4 dry erase boards. They're nice. They're pretty thick and sturdy, good quality. You get 4 dry erase pens. You get a handful of meeples, nice chunky, bright red, blue, yellow dice. Good, like kind of oversized cards for the blueprints. So they're a little bit easier to see. Oh, I completely forgot to talk about the god favors. There's a lot going on. Basically there's a not random number, but random gods. And there's a certain number, based on players that come out. And when you build the shrine, you get this god card that's this 1-use ability. And yeah, you go from there. So overall, in terms of general quality, I think it's good. But there are some issues. And I'm anticipating you having some issues here as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll run through again to talk about the positives. The big dice are nice and chunky. The boards themselves are thick and of good quality. There are some nice things about this, but I will say on a practical matter, and I think this is exactly where this should probably be talked about. There's some functional issues with the game. So as an example, they have a lot of these hills on here that are green. They have a lot of these territories that are green. They have a player color that's green. Doesn't show up very well, Sean. Like it doesn't read very well marker-wise when you're filling in a track or a settlement or whatever else on the board. And so the color distinctions bleed together. That doesn't work really well. You have a player aid, which is really nice, that has all of the additional icons and resources and workers and the dice face distribution, which is on the back of the board. Not particularly useful in a roll and write when you're drawing marker on the front. And let's just say in general, practically speaking, I found it hard to signify exactly which building is which in a clear way. There's a good chance for smudging, and it just it's not as functional as it needs to be. It looks good. The components are quality. It's decently laid out, right? There's nothing in here that's cheap, but it's just not intelligently done in a way, if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, I hear you completely. I struggle because I'm thinking, is this a component issue or is it a gameplay issue? I think it's a little bit of both. Let me say this first. My quarantine caveat, I have not played this at 3 or 4 players. It plays 3 or 4, up to 3 or 4. I played this at 2. I also said, hey, I should probably play this solo. It's quarantine. Let's play this solo. So I did that. And what I can say is that all of the problems you mentioned about potential smudging, about not being able to clearly discern what color marker is used or how to signify certain buildings was bad enough at 2 players, and at 3 and 4 players would be just exacerbated that much more.
Nightmarish, I think.
Yeah.
To be frank. And just to add another thing, the cards themselves, decent quality cards. Fine. But the art, I would say, on the God cards is underwhelming to me, and same on the Nero cards. I didn't like the style of that particularly much. They're fine. They are, for what they're trying to communicate, for the challenge. I feel. Let me be clear. I feel for this graphic designer in ways, Sean, because of the level of complexity that's smushed into so many parts of this game. I think
Right.
the graphic designer, for the most part, did the best they could under those circumstances, and the card layout is well done enough for that. But oof, I don't know. Yeah, it's you have some playability issues here, and anytime you have something that gets in the way of playability of a game, that's a component fail in my mind, and I think yours too. So, all right, that's art and components, Sean. Gameplay, Sean. I am so curious about this one. I don't know. I thought there was a chance that we might be divided on this one, but maybe not. I'm curious where you fell on this one.
Yeah. So at its heart, this is kind of a midweight Euro, right? There's you're collecting resources, you're building buildings, and it's dice drafting. So okay, that's not necessarily a knock against it. I think that I've kind of lamented how I don't enjoy midweight Euros as much as I used to, but I did enjoy this in the sense again that it's something novel. It's combining that midweight Euro with this roll and write. But kind of what we've already alluded to, there was just difficulties with the gameplay. So, for example, okay, so what you're supposed to do when you draw your building on the map of Rome, you have your color markers. There's green, blue, red, and brown. They're these thin, kind of cheaper dry erase markers. They weren't particularly dark. And you have to do it. You need to be very neat. And then there's a 2-letter acronym for each of these buildings. So like, I don't know, Brickworks is BW, and you put BW in there. But you're all writing at different angles. Some of you have neater handwriting than others. Sometimes maybe you have neat handwriting, but you couldn't write it. You couldn't put your meaty palm on the board because you're afraid you're gonna smudge. So you have to kind of hold it at an angle. Or maybe your meeple or someone else's meeple is on top of something, and so you have to keep moving it. And guess what? I even smudged stuff with a meeple from time to time. It was not easy to at a quick glance to kind of see and understand and process everything as far as on the board. I didn't have any of that problem with my own player board. Maybe I have two suggestions, and neither of them is good. Suggestion 1, include like better dry erase markers, like the thicker ones that are darker, but then you would need to basically double the size of the main board.
Yep.
That's problematic. But I think that would have been better. That's number 1. The other option is everybody has their own map of Rome, and they just have to draw in what other people are doing, but someone's going to screw up. Someone's going to be like, oh, I thought you put this here. No, I actually put it here. So neither of those options are great. But either way, it made playing the game a bit of a chore.
Okay.
Because you just couldn't readily process what was happening.
In so many ways. And you gave it as an example, not really as an example, but a good example is the actions of this game.
Mm-hmm.
Executing an action. Let's talk about the construct action, Sean.
Which is the most complicated of them. Has the most steps.
But it's also a critically important one to the mechanics of the game because so many of the other actions trigger off of that action. Whether it be the Legion ability, whether it be your ability to have the gear on the trade action. It's hugely important, and it's a way of getting resources, and it's honestly the heart and soul of the game. And it is obnoxiously complicated. You have a chance to move your overseer, so move them into an adjacent building. If you want to move them further, you have to pay a fish. I don't know about you, Sean. Possibly in a 3 or 4 player game, you'd really want to move around and position yourself. I didn't find myself using the extra movement a ton.
Yeah, I agree.
Then you're going to draw the building adjacent to the overseer. If it happens to be an architect you're using instead of a hammer, you get a discount. Great. Or you can, if assuming you're not moving your person onto an unavailable blueprint, Remember, you have to make sure you're putting your person on the right place or kicking someone off if you're using an architect, because those operate in slightly different ways. You then move them onto the new building. You move the foreman onto that right blueprint. You score a building on your thing. You trigger any instant abilities. Any adjacent buildings' gears, you trigger those too. And then you gain senators, which have their own different funky ways of interacting. That's an insane number of steps. And keep in mind, the buildings themselves will, besides the cost, right, you'll have some that can only be built on a marshland. You'll have some that have gear abilities that are looking to be adjacent to different things, so you want to care about that. They have scoring abilities that want to be adjacent to certain things or not near certain things. Then you have rules about how you can build. If it's this type of building, it can straddle a hill in marshland. This section of land is considered adjacent to this one because there's a little gap in the wall. You can't have them straddling hills unless you have the god that lets you straddle a hill. Let's not forget any of the abilities that you might have on your advisors, which would tell you if you build an army building, you get a soldier in the moment. If you build this type of building, you get this. It is ludicrously complicated on just that core. And again, it's the most complicated action. It's also one of the most vital ones, and it has this kind of thing. And again, this is a case where I think the graphic designer did the best they could, but you have so many of these different little things that are tangled up in this that make the game a chore to play. That action is a chore. It's an absolute chore. You get little hinky things, like when you acquire a jewel, fish, or basket, you can spend it to bribe an advisor as you gain it, but you can't store it. If you store it, you can't bribe it later, so it just kind of sits there. I'm going to have much more to say on the complicated nature of this, Sean, but or maybe not. But I did not just dislike this game. I despised playing this game. I'm. This is why I'm excited in I'm animated, not in that I'm like, and maybe this is anxiety and mood, and maybe I'm just feeling things in a more heightened way in this strange day we're going through. But and Abby played this one with me, and she understood it. She beat me the first time. I beat her the second time, and she played it, and she had the same reaction. She knew how to play it. She could play it half decently. But boy, I'm felt lucky I was able to get her to play it a second time. It just was such a slog, Sean. And maybe I'm way harsher on this than you are, but I did not enjoy this game.
Yeah, I think in that respect we would disagree. The complexity didn't throw me for a loop. Certainly I feel the first couple times we built a building, I mean, there's the process to it, and you go through that process and have to refer back to it. But then after the third, fourth building, I felt like I had it. We had it down. So for me, the issue was not the complexity. The complexity is a thing that I liked here. There are multiple paths to victory, and yeah, there's in some ways it kind of reminds me of a Vital Lacerda game where every action that you take has these like 7 steps that you have to do. And I think by default, I tend to like those types of games more than you would. And so I don't think that's, I don't think it's that surprising that we would have a different view of the game from that perspective. But I do think we are in agreement on the other playability factors in terms of just in terms of the interface. And so let me ask you, in terms of this interface, did this need to be a roll and write?
It's a good question. I don't know. I'm trying to think. How would you have it play without the roll and write elements to it? I
got this, right?
Hit me with it.
So resources, you are just writing in your storehouse on the just left side of your board, W for wood, B for brick, J for jewelry, etc. All right. Well, boom, wooden resources, right? So you're still rolling dice, you're drafting dice, and hey, I'm collecting a fish. Here's this fish. I'm collecting wood. I'm taking a wood piece. All right. So that's simple. That's easy enough. Certainly you can still have the writing portion for the tracks. You can have the writing portion for your soldiers, etc. But then how do you handle Rome? Well, pretty straightforward, sort of.
Is
you
it?
use Blocus. Yeah, you get Blocus style pieces
that you build on the board.
So everybody has a bunch in their color, You'd have to figure out how many do you need. I'm not saying this is necessarily cost effective. I'm not saying this is necessarily better. It's just how would you do this, right? So you have these Blocus style pieces that you could put on the board, and then you have little chits to represent the different building types. And you need, X number per building type. So I think that's certainly doable. And so then the question becomes, does that improve the game? Does that make it better? Does it make it worse? I don't know. You're going to nudge the board. And so instead of, accidentally erasing a bit of the board, now you're nudging the polyominoes. I don't know. I don't know that's better. Certainly, I think it'd be easier to see what's what and to recognize what's what. I don't think it would address the other issues that you have, which aren't issues for me. And then at that point, is there anything different or good enough about this game to set it apart from other midweight Euros, or is it this new blend of heavier game and a roll and write that it's counting on setting it apart? I don't know.
I mean, the thing though to me, Sean, is I get your point, and I'm not sure how this would be if you had Blocus style. I think it would help. I honestly do think it would help the way you're describing, because I have no idea in a lot of cases what building's what.
Yeah.
I mean, my handwriting aside, it's tough to evaluate from a glance what building's where, and then cross-referencing that with a card and seeing how that's interfacing with other abilities and connecting with that, and gear abilities triggering on this thing off turn, and it ultimately just feels like such a mess. I don't know. I didn't enjoy it, and it's probably the roll and write worsened it rather than helped it, which is a shame because that's what I was excited about in this, as I mentioned in expectations. I was excited that this was a roll and write, and it ended up being, in terms of the playability, its biggest Achilles heel. Again, it's the complicated nature of some of these actions, the way that they play out, and the fact that in order to properly account for them, you have to write in your storehouse, which, by the way, also can get smudged and isn't easy to tell from a glance necessarily what you have or don't have at your disposal. So, I mean, if you could have those as tokens, I think the game would probably be a little bit better.
Yeah. What I will say about the storehouse is I found a method. So I think what you're talking about with the storehouse is if you just kind of fill it in left to right and you just have a jumble of different resources, I started pulling them apart. All of my wood was in the bottom left. All of my stone was in the bottom right. So it was much easier to kind of see at a glance what was what. But no, I don't think that makes a huge difference. Did you play this solo?
I did not try it solo. I played it a couple of times at 2 players, and the game's lucky I gave it that many.
Okay. So the solo play was interesting. You have a deck of solo cards that was this I found very frustrating. So basically you take turns who's the first player for drafting dice, and you have to then roll a standard d6, and based off the solo cards that are in play this round will determine which die it takes, and it'll tell you which color to take, and if there's multiple dice of that color, then you have to find the closest numerical value when it wraps around. That was a little bit tedious. And then when it's after it's drafted its dice, when it takes its first action, you flip over the first solo card for that round, and it tells you to take this particular action. But the problem was, like for the conquer action and the expand action, it says conquer or expand in the province that has the region that has the fewest. But if there's a tie, then do it in this order. I would have to constantly go back to the rule book to find that order. There was plenty of room to write on the card. If it's the expand action, here's what you do. Here's the preference. It was not a great solo experience. I will certainly not play this solo again. I will say that. It was incredibly tedious, I found. And solo games can be that way sometimes if there is a non-intuitive AI that you use. Some are better than others. This one was kind of rough. So don't worry, Alex. I don't think you should play the solo version of this.
Okay, good.
You're welcome.
I wasn't planning on it.
You're welcome, and you're off the hook.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I don't appreciate this game. Why am I so angry at this game, Sean? I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I think I get it. I wasn't frustrated by the mechanics of this game or the complexity of this game. I was simply frustrated at not being able to see what the board was doing at a quick glance. And I can't imagine this at three or four players. I just can't. And I'm a little annoyed too, because I did have such high expectations for this. And I just really want to like this game. And I think that there is some potential here. But unfortunately. Theme, Alex, unless you got anything else bad to say about the gameplay.
No, not really. It was an annoying slog in so many respects, and my score will reflect that. But we're not there yet. Okay. Theme. It was Roman, and there were Roman gods. Maybe we need to retire theme. I'm not sure. Or incorporate it somewhere else. It feels like it comes at a weird time in the review.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't know that it's a super thematic game. I like the idea, so the senators, we didn't talk really about what the senators do. They're worth points at the end of the game, but they can also be used to, you can deploy a senator to draft 2 dice at once instead of just having to wait. I like the idea that, you need a certain amount of military force to go conquer a settlement, but you only have to actually use up one of your soldiers because they're garrisoned there. You need fewer troops to do that. I like the idea of, wanting to connect these conquered settlements to Rome and that opens trade up and it's fine.
I mean, my favorite part, Sean, was constantly bribing everyone with all the fish I wasn't using.
Hey,
just nothing but fish bribery. That was about it.
Yeah. Well, we don't have any thoughts from the guild, so we'll just go into final thoughts then. We rate things here at the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale. In the parlance of Alex, a 1 is bad, terribly bad, makes you want to gouge your eyes out. I'm wondering if Alex can give this a 1 or if it's going to mercifully get a 2. 6 is good, very good, so good, it's good, and even gooder. Or an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. All right, so this game, for me, I think this could have been a 5. It could have been a 5. It's not a 5. 5 is a great game. We'll rarely turn down a play of it. Not a 5. All right, let's look at 4. A good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. Okay, all right. 2, it's definitely not a 2. I'm not going to give this a 2. It's not a 2. 3 is game is okay, not exciting, will play in the right situation. Man, will I play this game again? I really think I need to answer that, because if the answer is no, then maybe it is a 2 after all. I think I will play this again. There is stuff to explore here, because there's a bunch of different buildings, a bunch of different god cards. I certainly won't play this again solo, and I don't think I'd play this at 3 or 4. I think that this will be a 2-player game only. Raquel liked it well enough, but she had some of the same issues that I had. It's gonna be a 3. Game is okay, not exciting, will play in the right situation. I mean, I don't see myself keeping this. I see myself playing it maybe once, maybe twice more. I don't necessarily want to have access to it or need to have access to it. I'm just a little sad that it's not as much as I hoped for. And I think there was some potential here. So that's what I'm going to say. 3, game is okay, not exciting, will play in the right situation. All right. When's the last time we've had a 1?
It's been a while.
It's been years. It's been years. Is this the first one in several years, Alex?
Sean, let me discuss the scale here for a moment.
Okay.
On the bottom end, because it's certainly not higher than a 2.
Sure.
Game has some merit, but has significant issues. One is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun.
Oh, ooh.
So I think the component issue, the playability issue, combined with how the unplayability between the writing on the board, the information on the cards, and the complexity of the actions you're asked to undertake. I honestly, it's beyond not just not wanting to play this game again. This, to me, falls into poorly designed territory. Strongly. It is a clear one. It had to settle in my mind on that for a little bit. I think on first play, I was like, well, maybe it was just that I didn't understand it too well. Let me give it another chance. But as I broke this game out and as I slogged through the different steps and had zero fun playing it and got in enough plays to justify a review, tried out the different, there was potential here, but I found myself so aggravated by this game in so many ways that I can't justify going any higher than a 1. And it ain't going up on a double take. But no, this game is a slog, not a fun slog. There's a lot of, it's complexity for complexity's sake in a lot of cases. It doesn't play well with the roll and write. The roll and write, as we talked about, hurts it, doesn't help it, which is a bad thing if your game's called Roam and Roll. I'm not surprised, by the way, that you're higher on this than me. Not because I think you have bad taste necessarily, but just because I do think it's more of a Sean game than an Alex game in that way. That complexity is not something that drives you away in the way that it can drive me away. I'm okay sometimes with complexity, as long as the complexity has an interesting purpose and has interesting decisions behind it, as opposed to just a bunch of slogginess to get to. And we didn't talk about this during gameplay. I didn't find the decision super interesting, really. Not in most cases. Especially, again, given the opaqueness with knowing which buildings you've built and why. I've gone on enough. It's a 1. It's a clear 1 for me. It wasn't really a hard decision between the two. Not necessarily fun is exactly how I'd categorize this, and I stand by my score.
Can I ask you this? Did you ever have any turns where you traded in 3 jewelry for 6 coins?
Absolutely. First game I did it a bunch.
Oh, that felt good. I like that.
It's fine. It's fine. But then you have to remember, Sean, don't forget, you have to allow everyone to activate gear actions on their buildings because that's just something that's part of it. I don't know. Didn't like it. Didn't enjoy it. Made it very clear.
So it's a, what'd you give it?
Yeah, it's a 1.
Fair enough, Alex.
Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just catching this game at the wrong time. And this is just kind of the outlet. I have a feeling that if you share Sean's taste in games more, you will enjoy this, but not even Sean has this at a high enough score to where I think we'd either, sometimes, Sean, we have a 3 where it's like, I can see, this would be an audience for some people. Do you see an audience for this, actually?
I don't know. I wish we had some guild members that had played this and had weighed in and possibly had a different experience or different perspective. And maybe for some people who are more spatially inclined, like what's that one game, Tiny Towns?
Oh, yeah,
AG?
Sure. Yeah, I like that game.
I am terrible at that game. I am just terrible at that game. And like our buddy Matt, who has graphic designer background, he does better at that game. Like maybe there's just, I don't know. There's something interesting here. I'm glad I played this. I'm glad I took a look at this. I wouldn't mind playing this a couple more times. And maybe we're just big babies and there are people out there that wouldn't have the same issues, but who knows?
Well, fair enough. All right.
Wah.
Well, that's our review of Roam and Roll, a 3 from Sean and a probably unfair but actually fair 1 from me.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, finally, Sean, our Dukes Double Take, looking back at another game that was disappointing at the time. Episode 211, Have Fun Storming the Castle, where we reviewed Undaunted Normandy, a game where we are on the opposite side of the hobby, right? This is a series that people seem to really like in general. It's certainly been popular, and it really didn't click for either of us. And Sean, this was one where you unleashed some rage on the game. You gave this one a 2. You said you liked Memoir 44 way better. You said there's no space in your collection for it. You loved the card play, really did, but you hated the combat, and you were angered at this game at all of its missed potential. I gave this one a low 3. I thought in reading the rulebook this was going to be a 4 or 5 easy, but then after playing it, there wasn't really a situation I could see myself. It wasn't exciting compared to similar games, comparable games for me, like Battle Lore or Memoir 44. I enjoyed some of what was being done here, but it didn't grab me, and it was facing an uphill battle in the first place. So, have you played this game since, Sean? You told me something tonight that shocked me.
So I have a copy of Undaunted North Africa, which is the standalone expansion to it, that is supposed to be much more asymmetric. Basically, the Undaunted Normandy, the Germans and the Americans are basically carbon copies of each other, more or less. I did not buy this. This was not a review copy or anything like that. Rory from Empire Board Game Library sent it home with me so that I could check it out. Possibly at some point he and I play it. He was in a similar boat. Man, there was no coronavirus a year ago. He and I played this quite a bit, and he was also disappointed. And there is this desire, like there's something there. Like what you said, I was angered at the missed potential, and maybe they fixed some things in North Africa. I will say, oh shoot, is that right? Oh, I think it is. There is an expansion. I don't know if it's out or if it's coming out, that has a solo mode, which does interest me. It's called Undaunted. Undaunted Reinforcements. And I think the solo mode, I'm pulling it up, is designed by David Turksey.
Oh.
Interesting.
I don't think I'm going to be getting a Christmas card from him.
So I will play, and actually I was hoping to get in a play of Undaunted North Africa before tonight. I really wanted this game to be good. If this expansion, Undaunted North Africa, can move it from a 2 to a 3, I'd feel like there's some good in the world. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'll see what I could do and report back.
Interesting. I haven't played it since. I thought there was a chance that this would be maybe even lower a year later. I'm probably unlikely to play it again. I didn't dislike it as much as you did, but it just wasn't super exciting for me. Which again, I know we're on a different side of the hobby in many ways. Although the guild was, at least from the couple of opinions we heard, split on this one. Steve Paltrineri said, I was really excited by Undaunted Normandy when it was first released and bought it after seeing 1 or 2 reviews. I did, however, sour on it pretty quickly. I think the card play and deck building mechanics are just great. I love the decision on which card to play for initiative each round, and the act of using your deck to improve your board position was great. Then there was the combat. The combat sucked any sort of fun out of this game for me. Every match basically turned into me and my opponent dug into a position with good defense, hoping we drew the right cards, and checking dice until we rolled a high enough number to hit. Defenders of the game will talk about how you need to move into a new position and improve your dice rolling odds or whatever, but if you leave your well-defended position, you're likely stuck out in the open for a round or two, aka a sitting duck. Basically, this game became a boring, annoying chore. I'm considering unleashing the 1 here because in some ways I think this game is broken, but I'll leave it at a 2 because it does work technically, and there are some really good design decisions here. I, however, refuse to play it again.
Yeesh. So, yeah, I mean, I think I talked about in the review that obviously this is a very light war game, and to compare it to some of the more meatier games that I enjoy isn't fair. It's trying to streamline a lot of things, but like there was no good way to use line of sight. Like you could pretty much see everything if I remember correctly. Like there was no line of sight. line of sight's so important. War games, in a lot of ways, are not about combat. They're about maneuvering. And maneuvering is just not important in this game whatsoever. All right. So Sylvain Lacroix, kind of taking the other position, says, I thought that the system was well made. Scenarios felt different, and I loved the asymmetry of the game. I know that Sean really didn't like the dice mechanism, but I think that it gives a little bit of randomness. Don't think chit and counter war game, think Warhammer style dice chucking. On my end, the only thing that tarnished Undaunted is the fact that the same designers also offered War Chest, which is a slightly better game in my opinion. I will still give Undaunted a 4. So here's what's interesting about Sylvain's point. The dice chucking element of Warhammer style games, I love it. But you're chucking a bunch of dice. You're chucking like 10, 15 dice in one go. And the beauty there is that the randomness plays out over a decent sample size. Here, usually it's 1, sometimes 2, very seldom 3 or 4. And so the variance is just incredibly high, That's why I like games like Warhammer, because, that variance kind of smooths out over that bucket of rolls. So.
Yeah, no, and it wasn't something, I think that idea of kind of static gameplay of like hoping you draw the right cards and roll the right, it does feel static in the combat a lot of times. And so I that from that earlier comment, I get that totally. Yeah, I don't know. It just wasn't as interesting as the mechanics made it appear it was going to be. So.
Right.
Yep. Anyway, that's going to do it for the Duke's double take of Undaunted Normandy.
Well, hold on. We didn't say what we're doing.
What? Oh, score-wise.
What are we doing with our scores?
Oh, sorry. It's, I don't know. It's like a 2.5.
You know what? For this game, I don't have an issue with the half.
Okay.
I'll allow it.
Cool. And you're staying at a 2?
It's staying at a 2. Like I said, if there's any chance that the expansion can improve this from a 2 to a 3, cool. I don't have high hopes, and I'm keeping my expectations low. But yeah, keep it a 2 for now.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for the Duke's double take. Goes from a 2 to a 2 and a low 3 to a 2.5 officially for me. That will almost do it for the Dukes of Dice. But of course, before we wrap things up, we have the best of the rest. Not a lot of singing, as we noted in this one, Sean. Nothing for me to warm up the old pipes on, but that's okay. It is, after all, the final episode of the Dukes of Dice, so I don't need my voice for much longer. Michael Farnbrook with D6 Day, referencing the rolling in Roman Roll, sorry. So Angry at the Game, I forgot its name. And, of course, D-Day, which we heard referenced in our winning title.
And then Baker Mitchell, instead of quid pro quo, suggested quid roll quo. We've got the Latin in there for Rome, and instead of the pro, the roll. Yeah, it's good stuff. Good job, Baker.
Blaine Miley with my runner-up officially. I could have picked this one, Sean, but I think you broke the tie in my mind. With Veni Vidi Vici, spelled V-I-C-H-Y, referencing Vichy rule in France, and referenced in Undaunted. Really clever. Really liked it. Good name.
And that's Caesar's quote. I came, I saw, I conquered.
Indeed.
And then Jimmy DM90 suggested No Place Like Rome instead of No Place Like Home. What is that? Wait, help me out here. What does that have to do with Undaunted?
It's not a hard and fast rule, Sean.
All right. I'm just, okay.
Maybe it's explained on the Guild. I'll look it up while I also read this last one, which came from King Splendor, who did have an explanation on the Guild for his suggestion. Roland Wright, spelled Rolandrite. Of course, Roland, referencing, there was some, you like this title better.
The artist.
Yeah.
The artist.
That's right.
Yeah, the artist, Roland McDonald, did the art for Undaunted. His name is Roland, which sounds like roll and.
Yep.
And then rites, like religious rites, R-I-T-E, referencing the favor of the gods in Roman roll. So it's Roland Wright, which at first, Alex, you're like, well, that's what is that? It's a Roland Wright. Sure, Roland Wright. Like, no, it's Roland Wright. I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was clever. It's one of those that we talk about that it's too clever to be the episode title.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But but is definitely very good contender for the top 6.
It was. Congratulations on making the top 6. It was a clever name, and it went over my head. So, King Splendor, you are the wiser man than me. There's no doubt. All right, Sean. Well, that's gonna do it. Boy, wrapping things up on a 1. I don't know if that's a good taste to leave in people's mouth for the farewell tour of the Dukes of Dice. This final episode.
Okay, you have got to stop that.
You don't like that?
That's not the same. It's not about leaving a good taste in someone's mouth.
Oh, I see.
It's about something not leaving a bad taste. You've said that like 3 or 4 times on the show. You're not leaving a good taste in anyone's mouth.
Sorry, I thought you were discouraging me from falsely claiming that this is our last episode over and over and over again. Spreading misinformation on the end of the show.
Sure. Why not? Oh, okay. All right. Well, this is going to do it for yet another episode of the Dukes of Dice, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. What's up next? What are we doing next? I forget. We've got like 2 games in the hopper, right?
Tang Garden, I think.
Is Tang Garden the next one? Or I thought there was something else.
Not that I know of.
All right. Well, hopefully that will be a better game that we both enjoy, and we're not such sourpusses. So until next time. Oh, this has been episode 237, by the way. Rome wasn't built in a D-Day. Thanks again, D. Shannon. Until next time, this is Sean.
And also Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody, specifically 2 weeks from now.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on November 5th, 2020. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesofDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Arcane Wonders and Game Toppers LLC. You can learn more about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com and find out all you need to know about Arcane Wonders fine games at ArcaneWonders.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on!